Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan, in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-host, my dad, Mitch McMahon, my aunt, Lori McMahon Summerfield, and Dale Croft from the Lowell Historical Museum.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context as to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, we learn about two more of Dad's missions, one tragic, one successful. We also read a letter about his dinner at a local tavern and his love for Vada's fudge.
Oh, yeah, more sweets, as usual. But we're going to start today with our podcast guest. We have another guest on. We haven't had one in a while, but this is our first guest on the podcast not related to Bruce. So it's also very exciting. She is the executive director of the Lowell Historical Museum. Please welcome Lisa Plank.
Yay!
Thank you.
Lisa, tell us about your role at the Historical Museum. How long have you been the executive director?
So I have been the executive director for 11 years now, and I was a volunteer at the museum before that. So probably I've been with the museum about 15 years in total.
Is that when so have you lived in Lowell for
15 years?
For 15 years
Yep.
since you came to the museum?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And my background is in museums, so I've worked at museums my whole life. And when I came to Lowell, I walked down to the museum and offered to volunteer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very cool.
And now you're the executive director. That's great. Yes, as Dale mentions, a great one, for sure. So tell our listeners, we tell our listeners every single week to go to the Lowell Historical Museum website because that's where all of our podcast material is. We have the obviously the audio, the podcast audio, but also YouTube videos, images of Bruce's letters. What kind of reception have you gotten from this project? Are people actually listening to this?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, we track the numbers every month. And yeah, we're seeing a lot of activity on the website, people watching the videos, accessing the PDFs of the letters and everything. And we get a lot of really positive feedback. People are really enjoying this series. It's just a fascinating story and just a wonderful window into the past. It's even sparked other people coming forward with historical materials and stories that they've started sharing with us as well. So,
Oh, that's cool.
so it's been just a really positive experience. Yeah.
I love when you forward us emails on occasion with people like correcting things or adding stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm like, yay, good. We could add this in there. So thanks. Keep passing those.
Definitely.
Keep passing
definitely.
those along. We do have a lot of listeners that aren't from Lowell. So sometimes we have to be conscious of like how much Lowell stuff we get into because I do know we have people listening that aren't from here. But what can you tell, our non-Lowell listeners about what the museum does and kind of what it offers the community?
Sure. So we have a pretty broad reach for such a small museum. We do a lot of education programs with our local school district, and then we have exhibits and a speaker series that we do each year. But we also, ever since COVID, have really developed an online presence. So we're trying to get the history of Lowell out into people's hands wherever they may be in the world. So we do a weekly history article. We share this series. We've got a number of books and publications that we've put out. So we really try to find people where they are. We've also done a series of history boards around town and around trail systems in town. So when people are visiting Lowell and out for a stroll or walking downtown to go out to dinner, the history of Lowell is right there at their fingertips anytime. So yeah, we do a lot in the museum, but we also really try to get out in the community and out online so that people can find us.
That's great.
How many boards are there, and are there going to be more?
So we have, I believe, 14 boards in downtown Lowell, another 14 in the Lowell Township Park, and this year we're going to be producing 4 boards for the Fred Meyer Trail in Virgins Township. Okay. So those will be coming out sometime later this year.
Oh, that'll be
Very
fun to
cool.
see. I always like to go for walks in Riverfront Park with the dog, and so I read all those as I'm walking through there.
Yep.
And so Fred Meyer Trail is another good one. I'll have to stop and look at those when they come up.
We also created a history of each building in the Downtown Historic District, and those plaques are going to be going into onto each building in the Downtown Historic District, giving the history
Oh,
of
nice.
each And then we also do, one of the programs we've been active with this month is the immersion program for third graders. We have every third grade class in Lowell come to the museum for 2 full days, and they learn about Lowell history, they learn about artifacts in the museum, they create maps and timelines and write exhibit labels and do all kinds of interesting activities with us. So that's a program that we're currently doing this spring with the third graders. So
That's great. You still have them coming through
yes,
for a little bit longer, right?
Yep, we've got we've done 2 of the 3 elementary schools, and we've got 1 more coming up in March.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Very
a big deal
cool.
to spend a couple days at the museum. That's great. I remember asking my daughter's teacher if I could come, and they're like, "Oh, there's not really a lot of room." I'm like, "Please."
Well,
I ended up coming with the first graders.
Okay, yeah.
Instead, which worked out just fine.
Yeah.
It was probably for the best.
we keep them pretty busy, and all of
Yes.
our activity leaders are retired teachers or elementary school educators, so they're in good hands.
That's great. That's very cool. Is there anything else you want to tell our listeners about the museum?
Well, I could put in a plug for, we have 2 speakers coming up this spring. On April 22nd, we're going to have a speaker from the Michigan Historical Society talking about the disaster at Fort St. Joseph and Pontiac's Rebellion. And then on May 8th, Kate Dernicourt is going to recount her time. She did a National Geographic expedition on the Blue Nile, and she's going to share that experience with us. So those are both at 7 p.m. at the Virgins Township Hall. So those will both be really interesting historical
Nice.
speakers coming up.
Well, that's great.
And those will be on our website, too. People can see the date and time and location.
Okay. Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, so we're really happy to have the museum, as a partner in the podcast and kind of hosting all of our, letters and in the podcast so people can find us. So it's been great giving you all a shout out every single time, because we wouldn't be able to do this without you guys.
Well, and thank
Putting
you for
things
all the work
together.
you guys have put into this. It's just a fascinating story. So we're
We
lucky
think so, but we're a
lucky
little
to be able to
biased.
share it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Lisa.
Absolutely.
In last week's episode, Bruce got his cat, Wings, and Frank and Lotta found out about Norm going missing in action. So it's clear from these first couple of letters we're going to read next that Bruce is trying to kind of calm his parents' worries a little bit since they found out about Norm. So we're going to start with a letter from November 13th, 1943, in his own words.
Saturday night. Dear Mother and Dad, 'tis Saturday night, but what a difference from Saturday nights of old. If I hadn't noticed the day on my Stars and Stripes newspaper, I'd never known that it was Saturday. Every day is exactly the same over here. Maybe some of these discontented workers might take note of the fact that their army puts in a 7-day week and the hours run from 10 to 18 hours a day. Still, I don't want you to think that I'm overworked or tired. On the contrary, I believe my failure to catch an English cold is due to the fact that I'm in such good health. Because our schedule is so full, it's only natural that you get your rest and eat regular meals. Simply because there's no time for them, athletics have long since been forgotten. But you wrestle one of these 30-odd ton babies around all day, and you'll have your exercise without having some athletic paddlefoot supervise it for you. I know there's so very much you'd like to know about that is censored. However, censorship is one of the safety factors that protects our lives. Although it is at sometimes seems a nuisance, you can't get peeved at something designed to bring you back alive. I've written you all about a typical mission, at least all I can say about them. Just like little Raj's age must be all kept a secret until I can tell you at home in person. I can say that I've been over plenty of places besides Germany, but we'll wait for the details. Please, Dad, don't worry too much. I wrote a letter last week in which I tried to make you see it my way. Just remember, I'm giving everything I have, and God will take care of the rest. Yes, Mother, I'm getting your letters. Are you getting all of mine? I'm sure I've tried to write at least 3 times a week, and I'll continue to do so. About promotions, Mother, you know I'm the same way you are always about such things. The real thrill comes in knowing that you can serve as a squadron leader. It's that achievement that it's worth it, not the recognition. The recognition the fellows have for you in your own squadron is all that matters. Got to take a bath tomorrow before church, so I'll have to get up early. Your loving son sends you all his love and prayers. J. Bruce.
What does he mean, like little Raj's age, it must be kept a secret? So for our listeners,
I don't
little
know.
Raj is Bruce's nephew, right? The son of Bruce's brother Roger and his sister-in-law Vada. So, I mean, what is he, just joking around? Or is this some sort of family scandal we've uncovered? I don't know.
I think it must be a joke, right?
I don't know.
Okay. I mean, do we need to ask Gail again? Or are we going to be
We do
bringing
come
something
back.
up?
We do come back to that quite often. We'll need to
We
ask
do.
Gail. We better get her back.
Are we making a list of things we need to ask
highlight-
Gail?
There you go.
I need to highlight some of those things. Yeah. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
highlighting it.
Just like
That's
Roger's
funny.
age, keeping it a secret.
It must be kept a secret. I don't know. Okay. I
Okay.
wonder how old. Well, I bet we could find out. That's good. We'll see. How old was he at this time? But all right, we'll figure
Yeah.
it out. Interesting, though. All right. Well, a couple of days later, on November 15th, he wrote a far more sentimental letter to his parents in his own words.
Tuesday night, dear Mother and Dad, when I take a little time out to realize just how much worry, anxiety, and downright suffering I've caused you, it makes me wonder if the Lord wills it for children never to be able to repair their parents, because I'm sure I'll never be able to. Sis told me of those days you spent after Norm's mother called, right while you were probably beside yourself with worry. I was probably taking it easy. The Lord must wish to punish the people at home because they are the ones who do the great majority of suffering. Perhaps the only thing I can give you in return for all you've done and have been to me is my love. In this way, I'm sure my love for you should even the score somewhere along the line. I was thinking the other night, the greatest thing that could happen to me in the world is if I have a son and he loves me as much as I love you. If this can ever be, I shall be content. I'm not going to finish this sober letter by saying don't worry about me. I know that is asking the impossible. But when you do think and worry about me, just know in your hearts that whatever befalls me, I'm ready for, and I wouldn't change it if it were possible for me to do so. Here it is my bedtime, and I haven't even mentioned the Christmas box I received from Raj today. I'll write to him tomorrow, but tell Vada the fudge was super, and I'm hoarding it like gold for special occasions, meaning when I'm alone and don't have to split it with friends. Good night and God bless you. Your loving son, J. Bruce.
That's very sweet. Isn't that so nice?
That one got me a little bit.
Oh, I know. And he had 3 sons that loved him, so he
Yep.
was very content. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
And another mention of Bruce's sweet tooth with his love of Vada's fudge.
Yeah.
He really likes Vada and Helen, his sisters-in-law, to send him food.
Sweets.
The sweets, especially. Yes, I should be more specific. The sweets. All right, now it's time to get into our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell in November 1943. And the first thing I came across was a interesting story about the U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS William D. Porter. This is just a quick little thing that I found, but it made me laugh. But it says the Porter was demonstrating the accuracy of its torpedo range and accidentally left the explosives in, and it narrowly missed another ship, the USS Iowa, which could have been a really big problem because the Porter was only demonstrating the torpedo chute for President Roosevelt, Cordell Hull,
goodness.
and other top military officers that were traveling on that USS Iowa at the time. Can you imagine
Oh my
if
gosh.
you killed the president and like all the top Allied people because you accidentally
brass.
left the
Oh, my.
explosives in? Goodness. I mean, stuff like this, you're like, wow, how different history must have been. But I don't know. I was like, okay, well, I found this out because as I was looking at what was going on at the end of November in 1943, the big thing was the fact that Roosevelt and these top guys were on that ship heading toward Egypt for the Cairo Conference, which was apparently a big deal. So, Dale, what can you tell us about the Cairo Conference?
Well, the Cairo Conference took place on November 22nd through the 26th in 1943. The conference was held in Cairo in Egypt between China, United Kingdom, and the United States, and attended by Chairman Chiang Kai-shek, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt. The conference was held to discuss a strategy to counterattack Japan and the future of Asia after the war. The conference resulted in the Cairo Declaration, which was issued on December 1st, 1943, in which the Allies agreed to demand Japan's unconditional surrender, return all Chinese territories taken by Japan to China, establish a new post-war East Asia, restore Korea's independence, and bring pressure against Japan by sea, land, and air. The Cairo Conference also established China's status as one of the 4 world powers. Although many of the resolutions and promises made at the conference were not implemented, and the plan of action was repeatedly postponed and changed. The aim of a joint Chinese, British, and American counterattack on Japan was eventually achieved. The Cairo Conference was also known as the Sexton Conference. So China, Britain, and
Okay.
U.S. met to deal with
Japan.
Asia and the Pacific.
Yeah. So they had a similar conference like this to deal with the unconditional surrender of Germany.
Right.
The beginning of the year. Now they're at the end
Right.
of the year talking about what they're going to do with Japan. Okay. Well, good thing they didn't get hit by that torpedo on the way.
Yeah.
And then all the land that Japan took from China when they invaded China back, they're going to get all that back supposedly.
Okay. Well, Bruce does manage to do a few fun things around this time. He visits a pub near Thurley and describes the scene of wartime England very well to the rest of us. So this letter is from Saturday, November 20th, 1943, in his own words.
Saturday night, 9:45. Dear Mom and Dad, after dinner I took a short cycle down to a little country tavern located a short ways from here. The tavern almost in detail to what you might mentally picture an English wayside inn would be. Its exterior is of red brick with numerous ever-present gables. The roof is thatched with rolling eaves and a brightly painted sign over the door. Its gold-leafed letters proclaiming to the weary traveler that he can stop and be rested and refreshed. The tap room is slightly below ground level with a bar across the right side of the room as you come in. A coal fireplace burns at one end of the room, and an open stairway and balcony go from the oak floor to the large beamed ceiling. Off from this room are two other dining rooms with a kitchen in the rear. Into this old world atmosphere, a couple of Yankees walk and seat themselves at a small table near the fire. Eyes are raised, and a congenial nod is given by the people at the tables, and it's good evening in return from us. From behind the bar, the proprietor inquires, "What do y'all?" And we order half pints of bitters. Bitters is a dark English ale that has very little alcohol content and not too much taste. We pay 1 and 10 pence for the two glasses, about 14 cents apiece, and sit back and talk and be conscious of the atmosphere and tranquility. After 3 glasses, about a bottle and a half, we order sandwiches. The sandwiches arrive and are very good considering they are made from fish paste spread very thin. Yeah. A sprig of watercress adorns the side of each plate. After Cheerios around, we start back on our bikes, pedaling along the narrow asphalt road lined with the hedges. The countryside seems peaceful except that no lights show, and except for the nightly searchlights penciling the dark English night, we might be tourists visiting this country instead of fighting to help preserve it. Back here in my room seems very cozy, and my coal fire is glowing red from the coal I put on before dinner. So now it's bed for me. Good night, my dearest Mother and Dad. God protect you and keep you safe. Your loving son, J. Bruce.
He's always so good at describing the scenes of things.
That's just awesome.
Searchlights are always penciling through.
I know. I'm like, he's like a novelist here, and he's like, "Oh, I'm terrible at writing. My vocabulary
We
is
should
bad."
hire an artist to paint that room, sketch that room out.
Well, I couldn't help but think of again Masters of the Air when they went downstairs. They went downstairs. The beams on the ceiling. The proprietors were there. I kept thinking, was a stairway there? And of course, they went outside. When they went outside for that one scene where there was the fight, there were hedges as they were bicycling back. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, it occurred to me that
like
we might actually be able to find out what this pub is for real, or was, or is. So I reached out to our friends at the 306 Bomb Group Museum, which is in Thurley. So I've been having a nice back and forth with them on Instagram, and I sent them this letter. So does this sound like any place that it was around here? And their response was that the pub could have been a pub called the Falcon, because according to them, this pub was a favorite of the 306 Bomb Group, like everybody in Thurley, and it was a short distance from the airfield, so close enough for Bruce to possibly be able to bike to. And the Falcon is still there, although it's different ownership and maybe a little bit trendier than in 1943. And he said the museum said the red brick is now painted white, apparently, but it could have also been another pub called Fox and Hounds, which is also nearby. So.
Well, being the
they're still
foodie that I
there.
am, I looked up the menus at those places.
Oh, do they have fish paste?
That fish paste was not one of the things, but I think that they're a little.
thin fish paste sandwich.
Fish paste sandwich.
I think they've definitely gone up in like class or whatever. It's a very good.
I think
looks like a very
so.
good restaurant. to
Well, I
go
didn't
to.
think to do that. Are they have bitters? They still sell bitters?
I didn't see bitters on there, but
Okay.
I could be wrong.
All right.
I was only looking at the food. I wasn't looking at the drink. But that's it.
Yeah. Well, another thing Bruce does for fun is he mentions in a different letter going to a Red Cross show. So, Dale, what can you tell us about a Red Cross show, and were they different from USO shows?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
They were. A Red Cross show for troops was typically a frontline areas or in military hospitals and focused more on personal interaction and providing a sense of home-like comfort. Activities included letter writing, social gatherings, and basic entertainment. Where a USO show primarily delivered large-scale, big-name performances bringing a taste of Hollywood entertainment directly to the military bases, both domestically and overseas. The shows created a more grand and exciting spectacle compared to the other smaller-scale, more casual entertainment of the Red Cross series. So
Oh, okay.
it was
So-
more like sitting in your living room and just having a nice conversation at home or whatever, writing letters, talking about home.
He called it a show. That's
Yeah.
why I was like, oh,
Yeah.
And
But-
the U.S. shows we all know with Bing
Yeah.
Crosby and Bob Hope and all that kind of stuff.
like
but
big crowds and
Right.
like concerts
Yeah.
almost like, but this was
big
not that.
production,
Okay.
Hollywood production.
Interesting. I had no idea. That was the first I'd heard of a Red Cross show. It's like, what's that? But he went to one apparently around this time too. And in Lowell during this time, of course, it's November, so deer hunting season is in full swing. And he does talk about Raj in other letters being at deer camp, right, or Byrne getting a deer or something. So of course, the Ledger would report on who caught a deer on opening weekend because that's the thing where the Ledger would report on in 1943 and probably honestly 1993.
I was
Let's
gonna-
be real.
yeah, they
Maybe
still do,
2003. I mean, maybe that is actually still something the Ledger reports on. But it listed all the people that caught a deer, and this also made me laugh. It was this blurb. They list about 8 men who caught a deer, and then at the very end it says, Lewis Phillips returned with a black bear. I don't know who Lewis Phillips is, but apparently he got a bear on deer hunting season and just brought it back with the deer.
I just like how you. I mean, like.
I like how you say caught a deer.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
live
She's not
tracked
a.
it,
She's not
and
a
then let
hunter.
it go later.
She's not a hunter. Does it
okay,
say
well-
caught? Was the word that couldn't have been caught?
Well,
That's
maybe
it.
not. Maybe that's just me.
Got a deer, possibly. Got a deer because
shot
they
a
would
deer.
shot a deer.
And Lewis
I would think
Okay,
it
well,
would,
maybe
returned
I'm
with
just-
a black bear. That is
Yeah.
a little different.
I would think it would be he shot a black bear, but
Okay, all
Sorry.
right, fine.
I would
Caught.
think.
Maybe caught is not
But-
the right term.
maybe this Lewis Phillips was a guy that circus performer or something. He trained
bear
a black
came
bear.
back
I
on
don't
a
know.
Okay,
little tricycle.
all right.
Yeah,
I'm sure these animals were all dead, but but yeah, I just thought it was funny. He just brings back a bear. Anyway, I didn't know there were bears around here really like that.
Was
but-
that little section in All About Lowell or whatever the
Yeah,
little brews that
yep.
we find about Joan and Jan played yoga at Betty and
Yep. It was
Rebecca's
in one of
house and
those,
that
yeah.
stuff? Okay.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
deer hunting
all right.
season. It lists all these guys that got a deer, killed a deer, whatever you might want to say.
Yeah, it's fun to read those.
I was just having a euphemism for the children listening.
Caught. Yes. Caught a deer.
We're just gonna try to, tamper it down a
I
bit.
guess so.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, it's now time for our segment where we reveal information we know about Bruce's flight missions. And of course, for this information, we have to consult flight records and mission diaries from the historical website of the 306th Bomb Group and all of its squadrons. And on November 13th, we learned that Bruce flew another mission to Bremen. And this one was also tragic. So if you remember, Bremen was also, last time they flew to Bremen was during Black Week, and it's when Norm disappeared. So now they're going back. And this is from the combat diary from that mission.
Bremen, Lieutenants William Nally, J. Bruce McMahon, William Katz, and Floyd O. Scudder took off in today's weather, which became so thick that all were recalled except for 2 aircraft of another 306th Squadron, which hitched onto other groups and went to Bremen and Flensburg, respectively. Tragic side of the day was the crash in England of Lieutenant Scudder's plane in the turbulent weather. None of the crew, 6 of whom had only flown with us since November 1st, survived the crash.
So Bruce actually took pictures of the wreckage of Scudder's plane, and he included them in his scrapbook. So he must have been close by when it happened or came by to visit the wreckage later, but he labeled it, "Not all roads end in Germany." And he had a couple other crashes that he had on that page, too. I'll put those on Instagram. November 16th, they flew another raid to Naben, Norway, and the city was the home of a molybdenum mine. I had to look up that word, which the Nazis used to make weapons. It was the only active molybdenum mine still in operation in Europe, so it was a very important target, and Norway was occupied by the Nazis at the time. So this is also from the combat diary.
Naben. 5 o'clock briefing revealed a projected trip to Norway. Here was another target for precision bombing only, even more acutely so than Schweinfurt's ball bearings or Hull's rubber plant. And this target had the advantage of being almost undefended by the enemy. The only real hazard was the long North Sea haul, like a Pacific raid, and word that the Royal Navy would cover the course was good to hear. So our crews, piloted by Lieutenant William Katz, John Gassler, J. Bruce McMahon, and William Nally, and making up an extra element behind the group formation, felt pretty good about it all. Finding the molybdenum mine, chief of 4 mines in the district, which gave Germany practically her entire supply, was like spotting a small valley in a country as wild as the Lost World. So the group made 3 360s around the target to be sure of it, then dove the bombs home on the little buildings grouped around the head of the shaft. No fighters or flak to speak of disturbed the carefully executed proceedings of the day, and all our crews came home safely with a highly satisfactory job done and another raid earned.
Finally, a success. We did it. Tiny little target, bombed it, we're good. So, fantastic.
Yeah.
Feels good
Yeah.
after the different distressful missions before then. All right, we're getting very close to the end of 1943. In fact, Bruce is getting closer to celebrating another holiday season away from home. So we're going to finish today with a short V-mail he wrote on November 22nd, 1943, in his own words.
Sunday night. Dear Mother and Dad, this is the end of a Sunday, and my thoughts go winging across the miles of ocean separating us. I'm thinking, I hope today wasn't too dull for Mom and Dad. Perhaps right now you're having breakfast of ham and eggs, fruit juice, and homemade rolls or bread. It's actually 11 a.m., so my guess can't be too far off. And coming back from church, I bet the colors are beautiful. Soon, if not already, the falling leaves will unveil the town to you again. Are the leaves fairly well gone now? By the time I get an answer to that question, I'm sure they will be. Our Thanksgiving turkeys have already arrived in the ETO, so I'm sure to have that famous of all American feast. Remember my last one was in Merced, California? Seemed ages ago, doesn't it? Soon, when this is all over, it will all seem like a dream, and a few years together will heal all our wounds of separation. I've spent a pleasant day and have just loafed around most of the time. This seems to contradict my 7-day work week I spoke of. Well, not every Sunday is like this. Seems my every letter ends with, guess I'll hit the hay, but because I write to you the last thing at night, this is usually true. All my love, your loving son, J. Bruce.
Aw, so Thanksgiving is coming up. That's so nice.
Yep, another one away.
Another one away, and that'll be where we pick off for next time. So thank you all for listening to Letters Home. We hope you continue to listen as we go through Bruce's story. You can listen to Letters Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Thursday. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Lisa Plank from the museum for being our special podcast guest today. Thank you to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music, and to WRWW 92.3 FM for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. They're actually off the air for a little bit for repair. So that's a bummer.
Yeah, we're waiting for that repair. We are still streaming at
Okay. So you can still
radio.
stream WRWW at lowellradio.org. See you next time.